Hey, um, welcome back to Good Game Reviews. After a nail biter by the New England Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, what do I even cover first? Well, let's go ahead and just start with what I usually start with, which would be the offense. As far as the offense goes, about what I expected. Put a lot of points up on the board. Started to stall out by the end of the third quarter and a good portion of the fourth. But when they needed to score again, they came back and they put up more points, which was what they was going to have to do anyway. And yeah, I mean, as far as the talk goes, it was pretty much going to be an offensive battle. Now, before the game started, about a few days ago, I had predicted that maybe it wouldn't be as high scoring as everybody thought it was. I thought that the thing that people usually expect is, all right, so these are two offenses, two good offenses, and then you got two bad defenses or two mediocre defenses. This is going to be a high scoring game. And I thought maybe it'll flip the script and it'll end up being a low scoring game. But we got the expected. Now, as far as individual players, Sony Michel once again ran the ball for over 100 yards. I think he had 102 on the night. Maybe a little bit more than that. I had to go back and see. Sorry, I'm a little tired. Scored yet again. So for the third straight game in a row, he was able to get into the end zone twice tonight. So third straight game, able to reach the end zone. He's finally finding his form as far as running the ball goes. Now, the first two weeks that he played, the one in Jacksonville and the one in Detroit, I feel like he was getting his feet wet. So it took a little bit of time because we have to remember that he missed a lot of training camp. He missed pretty much all of the preseason. He didn't participate in any of the preseason games, and he didn't participate in the first home game, the first game of the week of the season. So when you miss all of that playing time, that can do. That can put a lot of pressure on you when you finally come back in and people expect you to perform, because when he came back in, it was pretty much just him and James White. So all the burden of being the premier runner was placed on him, and missing all that time out, I mean, it's going to take some time, but he seems to be in form now, and he's running it like people thought he would, being that he's the 31st overall draft pick. So, I mean, guess you have to run. But another player I want to look at, Grunt, didn't get into the end zone, but got a lot. He was able to put up a lot more yards than he has in these previous games, which, comes from, the defense not being able to cover him as well as the other teams that we played were able to cover Gronk. But for the most part, they did what they had to do as far as keeping him out of the end zone. He got close a few times, but just couldn't get in there. But as far as putting up yardage, he did a lot better than the previous weeks. So it's only a matter of time before there's another Gronk spike. Brady, he pretty much did what Brady does. I mean, there was the fumble. He got the strip sack. He got fumbled. He fumbled the ball, and Kansas City came and picked it up. He actually did it twice, but on the first one, he was fortunate to get the ball back. But yeah, he was able to throw a touchdown to Julian Edelman earlier on in the game. He ran it in for a score. So overall, he pretty much just did what was necessary of him to do. And shout out to the offensive line once again. There was a few moments where they faltered, but overall, even when Cannon was knocked out of the game due to concussion, the offensive line was still able to keep it together and really enforce their will on the Kansas City defensive line. Now, that might not be saying much considering that the Kansas City defensive line isn't really that good, but when they needed to step up, they did. The defense, as far as the defense goes, first half, phenomenal job. Limiting Patrick Mahomes to field goal after field goal. What more could you ask for as far as that first half went? Dante Hightower, he had a interception early on in the first half, in the first quarter, actually, I think, and was able to put the Patriots in good field position at the 5-yard line, which really like the underrated moment of the game, because without that, we don't know what happens. They could drive down the field, or they could get another field goal, or they could punt, and then we had to work down all the way down the field again. But because of that interception, that places them in good field position, and they were able to capitalize off of that and gave them a little bit of a good lead. It's 10-3. But you don't know what that does or what that means as far as the game goes, because every score really does count. We see the scoreboard as a result. Another thing, as far as pass rush went, not as good as I thought it was going to be. They obviously did get pressure on Patrick Mahomes and force him to make some bad decisions, but not as good as I hoped for. I thought we were at least going to have probably 3 sacks on the night at the most. But they were able to put up pressure, so that's one thing. As far as just after that first half, the second half, man, they are going to have to work on a lot of things once they go back to practice, because that second half, and this is something that they have repeated. This is something that we saw in the Colts game. This is something that we saw a little bit in that Miami game, even though the final score of that was 38-7. This is something that we've seen in a couple of games where we had the lead, and it was a substantial lead. And in the second half, somewhere either late in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, the Patriots allowed the other team to climb back into the game. In this case, they almost allowed the team not only to climb back into the game, but allowed them to get the lead and almost walk away with a W. Because at one point they were leading, and this was like late in the fourth quarter. So that's one thing that the defense has to get better at. They can't go into the second half with this good lead and not keep the same pace that they had when they left. It has to be continuous. It has to go from the first quarter all the way to the end of the fourth. Now, as far as special teams went, not their best night. could have been a lot better. Could have been a lot better, especially on one of the kickoff returns where they allowed the returner to pretty much get in the 5 on their side of the field. Just poor tackling. That just a mess. Another thing, if I could, go back to the defense just for a moment. One thing that I noticed, the Patriots won. If you're looking at the time of possession, Patriots won that battle. They were able to keep the ball in their hands longer than the Chiefs were able to keep the ball in their hands. Where they failed was allowing the Chiefs to score so fast. So even though you look on paper, it's like, oh, Patriots won that game because they were able to keep the ball in their hands. Yes, but they almost lost because the Chiefs didn't have to keep the ball in their hands that long. It seemed almost as soon as they got the ball, they were already marching down the field and boom, in the end zone. I mean, you literally have 2 drives that you can look at where they didn't even have to perform 5 plays. It was under 5 plays and they found themselves in the end zone. Unacceptable. One of those you can put on the special teams. Another one of those you can just put it on the defense. But as far as the special teams go, not really their best showing. Not their best showing at all. But if anything, the defense. Oof. I hate to see what Bill Belichick has to say to them. Man, he's definitely gonna chew them out come practice. Now let's get to grades. Offense, of course, I have to give an A. Really, I mean, Brady made. Let's not forget Brady did have some very, risque throws. I believe one of the throws almost, was going to be an interception, but the defender dropped the ball in the air at the last minute, so he didn't get the ball. So that could have been a really big game changing moment for the Kansas City Chiefs. But for the most part, Brady was able to make some good throws. Besides a few drops, which I will put on the defense. I did see a few no calls as far as the Patriots receivers trying to get the ball and the Kansas City Chiefs pretty much getting in there, getting real handsy before the ball got there. But that's another thing. He was able to make good throws. Receivers were able to make good catches. They got into the end zone, and if they didn't get into the end zone, they were able to kick the field goal. Shout out to Stephen Gostkowski, because a few times, you're looking at him and it's like, oh, man, will he be able to make this? Because there's certain times where, you're thinking, of course he's going to make this kick, but then something happens and it just goes far left or far right, or it hits the upholds, and it's like all that work for nothing. But he was perfect on each one. He was able to get it in there. Every extra point, every field goal attempt, he made it. He did what he had to do. So shout out to Stephen Gostkowski. So offense, I'll give them an A. A or A minus, wherever you want to lean. The most important thing is they did what we expected them to do, which was to come in and put up a lot of points on a defense that didn't look like they were going to be able to stop anything on the offense, whether they was throwing or running the ball. So the offense pretty much came in and did what everybody expected them to do, which was put up a lot of points. Now, defense. Defense also did what a lot of people expected them to do, which was give up a lot of points. Now, that isn't to say that people wanted that to happen, but it happened. And we had another one of these high scoring games, which I believe is the third one of the high score games that went over like 30, either 30 or 38 points or something like that. And that's just crazy. So really goes to show that, especially for this season, it has been an offensive season. It has been a season for the offense. So grades for the defense, I have to give them, really I have to give them a D. I mean, they could have gotten a way better grade. A way better grade. If you want to go based on that first half, you can give them an A. That first half was amazing. Closed it off with an interception and everything. Had 2 interceptions by the end of the first half. That was amazing. Pressure, good stops, limiting the team to field goals, getting interceptions, causing turnovers. That was an amazing start as far as the first half went. You can give them an A on the first half, but as soon as that second half came in, they just couldn't find themselves. Blown coverage, missed tackles. So you have to give them an F on that, on the second half. So when you combine it, it comes out to a D. It doesn't matter how well you start, it's how you finish. As the team, as far as the team goes, when you say it's how they finish with the dub. So you got to give them props to that. But it's as far if you're looking at the defense, they finish way worse than they started. So yeah, you got to give the defense a D. Special teams, I would also have to give them either a C or a D, pretty much, because they weren't really able to pin the Chiefs back a lot of the times. Steven Gostkowski was able to kick it into the end zone and keep the returner from running it back, especially after that one where the returner pretty much almost took it back to the house. I guess they was like, no, we gotta put him at the 25-yard line. We cannot give this guy a chance to get the ball in his hands and try to run it back. I mean, KC's special teams, excluding that 30-yarder that Patterson was able to run it back. Cordero Patterson, he was able to get it to the 30-yard line on one kickoff return. Other than that, they pretty much did a better job as far as special teams went, because they were able to pin us back, or if they didn't pin us back, they kicked it out of reach, so we wouldn't be able to run it back, and pretty much put us at the 25-yard line, and just forced us to work down the field from that point. So yeah, I have to give the Patriots special teams a D, really, because didn't really put the Patriots defense in a really good position to kind of make them panic, make the Kansas City Chiefs panic, and put them at a good spot to where they can make a play and then force them to punt from their side of the field, deep on their side of the field, so the Patriots could get it at a good spot. So as far as the special teams go, got to give them a D. So offense gets an A, defense gets a D, special team gets a D. So our overall team effort, not as good as you hope, but to give them the benefit of the doubt, this was a very good Chiefs team. Better than what we saw last year, better than what we saw 2 years ago. This was just a complete team that, for the most part, if we had to see some of those main starters that they had that didn't get a chance to get in the game, like a Eric Berry, this game probably could have turned out a whole lot different. I mean, let's not take away from the Patriots that they did a really good job on offense and on defense in the first half, but we have to also remember that the Patriots did get a little bit lucky on this because there were some pieces out, and if it weren't for that, this game could have looked a little bit different. But they got the job done. So final score 43-40, and that's pretty much a wrap on the night. So next week, week 7, got the Bears traveling to Chicago. And as far as Chicago is looking, I thought I knew who they were. But looking at this current game where they went into overtime with the Dolphins and somehow they just blew it, I'm pretty sure they're still a top 10 defense. So the Patriots are going to have to look out for that defense, especially with Khalil Mack on the end of the ball. So they're going to be facing a better defense than they did this night. But I believe that this night was a good test as far as looking forward to a future playoff team as far as this season goes and seeing what they could do against that team. So overall, this was a good test for the Patriots as a whole. And next week will be a good test for the Patriots offense going against a really good defense and seeing what they will be able to do against a defense that will be able to provide a little bit more pressure than this Kansas City defense. So that's all for me. This has been Good Game Reviews. I'm Rakeem, and I'm out.